The information provided in this show is intended for your general knowledge only and is not intended to be, nor is it, medical advice or a substitute for medical advice. If you have or suspect you have a specific medical condition or disease, please consult your healthcare provider.
You're now listening to the Health Hero Show with Tim James.
What's up, Health Heroes? Tim James here, founder of ChemicalFreeBody.com and your host for the show that defends public health by simplifying and demystifying how to live an energetic life with a flat belly. So if you're into freedom, a healthy gut, and staying young, this is the show for you. What's up, Health Heroes? Tim James here with another exciting episode of the Health Hero Show. Today in the house, I've got Chance Garton. We were just talking, Chance, like, I am so freaking busy with my life right now. I'm like, I forgot, like, I keep forgetting things. Like, how did we get introduced? I mean, I know I went on your show, but who introduced us?
Maybe I've got the same problem. I don't know for sure. I think your assistant, Stephanie, came into my emails one day and was like, your show looks like a good fit for Tim. And it definitely was. My audience loved you.
Oh,
really
sweet.
Good vibes, really good energy, amazing stories, blew all our minds with some of the recovery and the graphic detail. And yeah, we were all inspired.
We were talking about poop for sure. That's awesome, man. That's right. It was our booking agent. So I'll have to send him an extra $5 tip for getting a good guy like you on the show. That was awesome. Well, cool. Well, we hit it off so much. I really liked your vibe and everything. And I learned more about what you were doing, and the word sound healing came up. And this is why I wanted to have Chance on, because I wanted to go deep into the sound healing stuff, because literally, I've learned that we're all frequency. I remember when I was at first in my beginning, my journey at the Hippocrates Health Institute, and we were outside in a hut, like a straw hut, because they have huts because it's in West Palm Beach, Florida. And you can, like, teaching lectures outside at outdoor huts with windows in them. So cool, right? And Dr. Clement's teaching this lecture, and he's tapping on this wood beam that's holding up the roof and stuff like that. He said, you have to understand that everything here is vibration, everything. He said, you think that this wood is solid, but it's not. And I was just trying to wrap my head around all that. And anyway, so I come back home, I go through this whole journey. I got into yoga, right? And I got into yoga. And then somebody was like, hey, why don't you you should come to one of our sound healing yoga classes. And I was like, what's that? Oh, we play a gong, or we use singing bowls or something like that. And I was like, I'm open-minded. I'm like, I'll try anything. Sure. So I went to it, and oh my God, dude, as you know, for the health heroes out there, it was just like, they started hitting this gong, and I laid down for like an hour and a half, and I was like out. I was out. It was an hour and a half. And when I woke up, it seemed like it was like 15 minutes long. Like no time had passed. And I felt so freaking relaxed. I felt so calm. I felt like all my nerves had gotten calmed down, that I didn't even know they were kind of jacked up. And I just had this subtle feeling of just calmness and relaxation, and I felt great. And from that day forward, if there was ever a sound healing available, I was there. And I would go and I'd put my head right up next to that gong. I'd get as close to that frequency as I possibly could. And then another thing, somebody told me about tuning forks, right?
That's what I do.
Yeah, what you did, you brought that up. I was like, cool. And so I went to this tuning fork session, and I laid on this bed type thing, like a massage table type deal. And then this lady, like, bing, and she hits this fork thing. And I felt that frequency go from the top of my head, like down through my spine, and zoom. And it felt like electricity and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And then ding, ding, ding. She hit it a few more times. And all of a sudden it was almost like it was like remapping my energy or something. Because the first time she hit it, it was like, I could literally feel it. And then she kept hitting it. It was like less and less and less until it was just like ding, ding, ding. And it was all, my body had smoothed out. And I left that thing feeling like a jelly, jelly too. And I felt awesome. So after you had me on your show, I was talking to you. I'm like, so you do sound healing? I'm like, I want to know more about this. And what do you do? And you said, I actually offer sound healing sessions, and you do tuning forks. And I'm like, dude, I haven't done that in a while since the whole COVID thing. I'm down. I paid for a session. and you set me up. Thank you very much. And we did a session, and the same thing happened. How long? It was like an hour, hour and a half. How long was it?
It's about an hour. Yeah, that's usually how long I work with people for a typical session. And the other thing to add to the mix is that this is done remotely, which is powerful. We can get into the mechanics of why and how that's even possible. But
yeah, we had a great session. Good point. Because he did it. I think we did it over a Zoom call on my phone.
Yeah, and I've actually even performed these for people where we weren't on the phone. We picked the time and we both agreed and had consent that it was going to go down at this time, and they were open to receive. And I did the process as if, so I set up a massage table myself, and I actually lay out crystals and candles correlated to the chakra and the major parts of the body. In fact, if you look at what I build, it's mostly selenite, and it's practically like a human skeleton made out of crystal. And that's sort of like my intentional transmitter, and it works amazingly. Someone pointed out it's kind of like a voodoo doll, but for good. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And that's how I do it.
Voodoo doll for good. I like it. So, and guys, it's like, and I learned a lot about crystals too, and how they're holding all this energy. It's amazing. And like, there's mats now that they have crystals in the mats. Biomats have crystals in them, and they work, right? So
all our technology that transmits information, remotely through wireless, and basically anything electronic has got crystals involved.
Yeah, it's so everything we're talking about here. If you're new to the show and you were like I was, you might be thinking, "Oh, this is kind of woo-woo." It ain't. I'm telling you, I'm redneck from Eastern Oregon. I've been through the gauntlet on this stuff now, and all this stuff that I thought was woo-woo is like, it's the real deal, and it actually works. It's improved my life. So anyway, Chance and I did a session, and it was one of those, it was the same thing. It was like an hour long. It seemed like 10 minutes had passed. It was done. And I felt freaking awesome. It was like I was at a sound healing, right? So you did the same thing with and I actually felt a little bit of that too. When you hit the fork, it was like realigning stuff. So what I wanted to do is, like, before we get into, and stick around, because what we'll do is we're going to get into at the end some solutions and what he's doing in his work that can actually help you, like literally help you with your quality of life, your groundedness, your health, and your spirit, and being able to tap and tune into your spiritual practice more and more and more. So let's do that. Let's switch gears. Why don't you tell us about Chance, about, like, who you are and how did you get into all this stuff?
Yeah, man. I'm originally just like many people in my generation. I've just turned 33. So I went through the similar process that a lot of us did in the Midwest, suburban kids, where you go to high school, then you go to college, trying to make your parents happy, don't even really know why you're there. And when I graduated, I actually got a creative writing major. And I guess I put that to use in creatively articulating things as I speak as a podcast host. But when I got out of college, I really was aimless, and it was kind of depressing. And I ended up getting pulled into the music festival scene by a lot of my friends who had been going for years. I was kind of a latecomer to it. And, there's ups and downs to it. It's a party, but it's also a big hub of creative individuals come together in sort of an underground way, usually out in nature, camping festivals. So a lot of potential and advantages there for finding yourself or getting inspired. And that's kind of what happened to me. As you see, I've got a crazy psychedelic t-shirt on. Had some mind-opening experiences with experimenting in the realm of plant medicines. Not really something that I'm into now, not doors that I need any help opening anymore. But in particular, this is interesting because early in my experience, I actually did run into sound. And when we talk about sound healing, there's a huge array of possible things that could encompass as an umbrella term. What I do is not the same as going to a yoga studio and hearing singing bowls played and just laying down. Not saying that isn't beneficial. They all have different aspects of what and how that's working and what's good about it. And my work is maybe more precision, almost like a technician going in a surgical way, surgical strike against your blockages. But one of the
surgicalsoundhealing.com. I think we have a new website for you.
I call myself an aura technician. But the time I ran into sound was actually, it's cool because I just had this guy, we reconnected on my show Vibrant, which is my second show. My main show is InnerVerse. My live show on Wednesdays is called Vibrant, and that's more of a community thing. I just had this dude on, James, who is also known as Admiral Hits, and he has this creation called the Sonic Portal. And I had run into him way earlier in my life at a festival a few times when I was younger. And his Sonic Portal is this crazy contraption, if you will, of many gongs that are arrayed in a circle. And he puts people in the middle of these gongs. They're tuned to different frequencies like each planet. So he's hitting you on all these different levels of your energetic body with frequencies. And I went in there the first time not knowing what to expect and had a journey, like a full-on shamanic trance journey. And I didn't reconnect to sound as a modality as a practitioner till later in life, when I discovered the work of Eileen Day McCusick with her books Electric Body, Electric Health. Highly recommend this if anybody's interested in the topic from a level of science, learning about ether and plasma and the physics of our universe under the electric theory. And then her other really great work, an earlier book, is called Tuning the Human Biofield. And this is the book where, after reading it, her earlier book, I actually, just from reading this book, I was able to put it into context with some of the energy healing, Reiki-like practices that I developed on my own, kind of intuitively, instinctively, through my journeys in the festival world. I kind of that type of guy, maybe a healery mindset, always looking for somebody having a bad time that I can help them out of it. And I learned a lot about manipulating my own personal energy and assisting other people get back into flow and out of stuckness just intuitively. A lot of that came through playing around with crystals, but in those places where the energy levels are really high, big mass groups of human beings having a good time, and a lot of times their chakras are kind of blown wide open for various reasons, I learned a lot. And so putting that past experience in context with the scientific knowledge and the explanation of the modality of using tuning forks to balance one's aura and bring stuck energy from left or right back into center, I was able to pretty much develop my own version of the practice without needing to go get certified or training. Although I'd love to maybe take her classes someday at the biofieldtuningstore.com. She's an amazing woman. I've had her on my show a couple of times. Huge inspiration to me. So anybody out there that after listening to this conversation wants to learn more, or maybe even explore this as their own practice rather than just receiving it, go check out the works of Eileen Day McCusick, or find her on some podcasts or on my show. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. So, I mean, this is kind of a condensed version of my story, of course, but after finding myself in this scene that was so inspiring to see all the creativity and the music and people coming together with the intention of love and harmony, I kept running into amazing individuals that I just wanted to have heady conversations with and talk about the mysteries of life and the universe and everything, and ask the big questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What is reality? And I noticed that those conversations were invigorating. There was an intoxication of fellowship that occurs whenever people get into a flow state of honest reflection, soul to soul. And that ended up being a strength of mine that later I developed into becoming a podcast host myself, because I wanted to bring those type of conversations that seem so magical and mystical out of the woods, so to speak, of like the festival world and my communities there, and to the quote unquote real world as best I could. Podcasting seemed like a good avenue for that. Along the way, before I got into that, I was developing myself creatively as an artist. I do graphic art of various kinds, and that was a huge, huge help, because before I started creating, I just felt this, the post-college, when I didn't have a direction, I felt aimless. There was this hole or this void in me, and I didn't know what it was or what was wrong. But at the point that I just started making stuff, even just for the sake of making it, not necessarily to show anybody or to sell or whatever, that came later, but actually creating that connection to imagination, or through the imagination portal, is the strongest and most direct way to link up to source energy that there is. I mean, when you think about it, the word origin or source is about, connecting to it is about being original. So whenever you can tap into your own uniqueness and originality, you are walking the most authentic spiritual path that exists. There are many out there, dogmas and religions, and some of them have many very helpful things to say and to teach us. I'm not saying avoid all that, or don't learn from that. But the one common ground between all human beings in terms of finding themselves spiritually is through the process of creation, one way or another, whether it's through having kids or making art, making music is a big one. To me, that's like my primary message, is to help people connect to their imagination, open up their imagination, because if we can't imagine ourselves and our world differently, then we'll never change for anything other than the worse.
I actually heard that from Bashar, he said that imagination is the conduit from the higher mind to the physical mind.
Yeah, and in the sort of hermetic principle of mentalism, that all is mind, that actually is saying that the whole creation or the whole cosmos is the divine imagination. And so you're literally connecting to God or great spirit or the supreme being whenever you are practicing imagination. And that's why so many amazing things come through imagination. I mean, some of the episodes I do on my show involve decoding Hollywood movies that have a lot of bad intentions seeded into them, you can tell. But because people are involved with these projects that are tapping into their imagination and they're creating, things come through that were never intended that actually reveal great truths. And that's part of the fun. And I think that that applies to any creative act. I mean, we learn from our creations almost more than from any other way. Like, ask anybody that has kids and they'll say their kids taught them stuff that they never taught their kids.
Right. Yeah. You know, and it's unfortunate too, because a lot of people, we get so bogged down in society and what our parents told us to do and all the social conditioning and stuff like that. And people don't even know like how special they are, that creation doesn't make mistakes. That's why they're here. They're here for a reason. Otherwise, you know, if you think that, oh yeah, I'm a mistake, you're like going completely against creation. Like, you think creation made a mistake? No, I don't think so. You're here for a reason. You have some special talent or gift, and in the act of creating, you're actually manifesting through basically from the what's coming from God, basically, if you want to, whatever you want to call it, he, she, it, the vortex, the higher mind, whatever that you call God, you're actually downloading that. It's just like when you're a little kid. I remember making fishing lures, and I still have them, and they look pretty cool, you know, and I painted them and I put a lot of time into them. And, or even if like I weeded a garden, I hated weeding, but when I got done, I'd look back at the strawberries and they're all beautiful and no weeds. I'm like, I felt some deep satisfaction and like accomplishment from that. So it sounds to me like what happened.
Really good metaphor, Tim, because we come into life perfect, absolutely perfect. And then as we go, we accumulate that which is not us. And so the process of what you teach people in the Health Hero podcast is all about removing what is not you to reveal the underlying perfection. So the weeding of a garden metaphor is very apt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty awesome stuff. Okay. Before we go to break, is there anything else about Chance that we need to, anything cool that how you got into this stuff, you know, and what you're doing with sound healing and helping people?
I don't know, other than, man, this stuff really teaches you about the nature of reality. I'd love to, in the future segment, start talking about ether, because part of what we're doing with sound healing, especially demonstrating it through the fact that it can be done remotely, is that distance is conceptual. Separation is an illusion. Everything is mental. And so you and I are in the same room as one another on a spiritual level, on an energetic level, even though we're states away.
Okay, let's do that. We'll take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get into ether, which still to this day, even though as open-minded as I am, I don't really quite understand it. So I'm very excited that you're here. I mean, I kind of do, but when we get back, and I'm going to share something that is related to this that I think will help people understand how real it is. We'll be right back. The average person today is carrying around 6 to 12 pounds of impacted fecal material and mucoid plaque in the small and large intestine. That's gross, but worse, it's super unhealthy. That is why we created Gut Detox Formula. This ancient 1,000-year-old formula from India gently micro-cleanses the intestines, removing all of that funk and gunk and junk that is destroying your health, while leaving your good bacteria behind, which is part of your immune system. And there is no diarrhea like most gut detox products, and it's made with the same chemical-free body promise, no stimulants, 100% nature, and always made in the USA.
Get yours today at chemicalfreebody.com.
What's up, health heroes? Tim James here. I am back with my guest, Chance Garton, and he is a sound healer extraordinaire podcaster. At the end, I'll give you more stuff, but he's at InnerVersePodcast.com. That's InnerVersePodcast.com. And now we are going to talk about ether. Okay, so to segue into this, I'll give you an example of what you said before break, which was, there is no real separation from time, space, distance. Like you and I are etherically in the same room right now. Basically, we're close, right? Well, what was really interesting, back to Hippocrates again. I remember one of the lectures. They actually had, they were part of this experiment, like the doctors there at the institute, and they took somebody. They had some people in China, okay, and they had people in the States, and they were over the phone, and they hooked people, the person in China, they hooked them up to equipment, diagnostic equipment, super modern medical diagnostic equipment that would monitor their heartbeat, their pulse, all this stuff, but it also measured their immune system, right? And what they did was, in that experiment, is they started praying for that person. So the people in the United States started praying for the person in China that had an illness. And I think now it's kind of coming back to me. This person was literally wanting to come to Hippocrates, but they couldn't because of finances and the trip and everything. So they set this thing up, and they turned it into an experiment at the same time to test it. Well, what ended up happening was that when they were praying in the United States for this person in China, the person's immune system started going up, 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 like over the phone. Now, thousands and thousands of miles away, right? And they were able to do this, and they actually measured it. It was I'm kind of like giving you the cheat sheet of what the lecture was about, but it was just like, I was like, whoa, that freaking blew my mind. And I knew that Dr. Clement wasn't BSing me, because he was just, telling the truth. And so anyway, so let's get into that. That maybe you can talk about that. Does that relate to ether? Because I'm feeling like it does at some level. What is ether?
Absolutely.
What is ether, and like, how do you explain it to a redneck like me?
Yeah, I mean, ether could be its own huge conversation. It's been debated about whether or not it exists for a long, long time. People often say Einstein is one of the reasons why ether was proven to not exist, but actually later in his career, he said that ether was necessary for any of his theories to work. Now, whether or not you're cool with Einstein, I don't necessarily believe everything that these great minds of scientism have presented to us. However, there's really never been a disproving that ether exists, and there's been plenty, in my opinion, of anecdotal or experiential ways that one can demonstrate to themselves that it does. The question is, what is it? So it goes all the way back to like Plato, Socrates, the Greek philosophers, and I'm sure earlier, but they had the idea of the 4 classical elements, and then that's earth, wind, water, fire, and then the 5th element being quintessence, or that would be ether. So we were talking about before, you mentioned how, knocking on the pillar and saying everything's actually vibration. That is absolutely the case. I don't know if anybody out there has ever seen like a chart of the different spectrums of the wavelength of vibration or light, but you have the visible spectrum that goes from red to violet, and then above that, ultraviolet. Further above that, you have gamma rays, X-rays, etc. But below that is infrared, and further below that is actually sound. So when we talk about sound, when we talk about electricity, when we talk about light, and we talk about matter even, it's all the same phenomenon of vibration at a different rate of vibration, a different speed, if you will, frequency. And ether, the best way to describe ether is that it is actually the medium that is vibrating to coalesce into any of these phenomenon, whether it's light or matter or sound. So when you see like a lightning bolt happen in the sky and you hear the thunder after you see the flash, the reason why you see the flash and then you hear the thunder later is it's actually the sound and the light are the same thing, but they're vibrating at different speeds and thus hitting your senses at a different time. A really great way to understand ether is that as the interconnecting medium through all things, you could actually just call it life force energy or prana or chi. or scalar waves. There's so many different terms that get thrown about in these alternative sciences and physics that are really kind of talking about the same thing. But what's important to know is that your body is a vessel and a container for life force energy or ether. It's even you could consider it as a plasma in a sense. We don't have to get too deep into plasma, although that's an interesting conversation too. There's a particularly great quote from Wilhelm Reich, who was a guy who invented orgone therapy. He discovered what he called orgone energy, but this is really just like prana or life force energy. And he says, once we open up to the flow of energy within our body, we can also open up to the flow of energy in the universe. And we've all heard it said that our bodies are created in the image of the universe, and this is absolutely the case. So the ether in our bodies is contained within ourselves like a vessel. So what we are vessels for universal energy. Energy is consciousness. Energy is light. Our memory is stored in this field. You can go ask any neuroscientist at the top of their field and ask them, where's memory stored in the brain? And they might believe that it is, but they're not going to be able to pull out the filing cabinet of cells that is exactly written down with the hard drive memory of what happened to you when you were in second grade. It just doesn't exist there, but it is part of our field, energy field. And I know this to be the case because whenever I work in people's aura or biofield with sound, and I run into off-balance energy or distortion, compartmentalized, fragmented ether, I'm able to then oftentimes give a pretty direct account of about when in their life this energy got stuck, what the feeling is like, maybe who it relates to, if it has to do with their mom or their dad. It gets really specific, actually. So our body is a vessel for ether. The etheric layer of our body is connected to all that is. You can look at the paradox of oneness versus individuality and separateness as that life force energy or ether is the part of the reality that is one. And then our vessels that contain it, those are the unique expressions. So your biofield that contains the ether has like a double layer plasma membrane and outer boundary, very much like a cell in your body on a smaller level, because the whole universe is fractal. And in fact, your etheric body is a fractal microcosm of the universal etheric body. So in a real big woo-woo way, doing work on your energy field, doing healing on the ether level is affecting all of humanity and all of the cosmos in a positive way. Whenever people talk about the Akashic record or the memory of the universe, this is the universal etheric body. Just like your memories are stored in the flow of energy in your field, the universe actually must contain a record of everything that ever happened in order for ether to continue vibrating in the correct pattern of the universe to keep all the matter and keep everything straight and in track and where it was the moment before. We don't have to diverge into quantum physics, but the mystery of why everything just holds together and doesn't fall apart has everything to do with this universal memory or God's consciousness in a way. So your biofield is where your memory is stored, or your ether is where it's stored. And thus it is how you know yourself. And the further out of balance or the more leakage there is in your container, you're literally leaking light or biophotons. So that's another really interesting digression we could get into, that our DNA and that our cells are actually off-putting subtle biophotons or light particles. And this is very measurable, has been measured by science. If you like take a beanstalk, for example, and you take a little razor and you make tiny little scoring cuts on it, not enough to kill it or really damage it that much, but there's now holes in it, very subtle little cuts. And then you measure the biophoton emission of that beanstalk, it actually goes way up. So in much the same way, if our biofield, the plasma membrane around it, has been punctured or is porous, and there's many ways where that can happen, and stress is one of those main ways, but also like psychic vampirism in a sense, like energy vampires, that's a real thing. Anything that's parasitic in nature tends to want to puncture you in some way. And on an energetic level, that is true as well. So the more integrity we can get that our vessel into, like physical integrity of the actual body matter, but also integrity in the plasma membrane sheath that is our bubble around our field, our aura, the more of our self or our light or our ether or our memory, and I mean memory on a true, massive, expansive spiritual level, memory of who we are on a deeper level, why we incarnated, what our purpose is all connected to this. The more integrity our vessel has, the more of ourself that we can hold at one time and be aware of, and the more connected we're going to be to our mission, our purpose, our intention in life. So like a summary is our consciousness is non-local, and it is a part of this vibrating electromagnetic field of universal ether. And the ether itself is the luminiferous plasmic medium, which means it's a light plasma medium. And plasma is a state of energy where it's more about the flow and potential of the energy rather than it being in a physical, solid, liquid gas form. So the ether is this plasmic medium through which emerges all energy and matter in the cosmos. All existence is woven through and out of this ether, and it contains an instantaneous non-local connection between all points. It's basically the fulcrum point between the wave particle duality question of quantum physics.
Well, I think that's a darn good explanation. I got half of it. So that's real, but it makes sense now. I get it now because you related it to the cell, and like a lot of my work is like teaching people about, about the cellular level and what's going on and all the pollution that's there. And what we're trying to do is clean the cell up, and we're trying to make sure that you're hydrating the cell. And we want to have that good lipid membrane, that good container, right? So the cell can accept what it needs to and get rid of what it wants to.
That's exactly the same thing with your energy field. It works just like
that.
Yeah,
I was totally vibing on that. And I was like, oh, it's the same thing as this, what I've been teaching people with the cell. It's just, you can't see it because it's at a different frequency. Just like, when you're changing the channel on the radio, you're changing the frequency, but you can't see it, but it's a different frequency, 97 point this or 104.7 KCMB, the local country station back in LeGrand. These are different frequencies. You can't see it, but there's a field there. So now I get it. So I see you now as somebody that sees the energetic field around somebody. You can see the little holes in it that are leaking out the biophotons, right? And they have these, it's not strong or whatever. And when the field's down, the field's weak, it's out of balance, they're more susceptible to, disease, bad relationships, just not feeling good, not having a high quality life. So you're basically coming in and helping them rebuild the cellular membrane in a way, right? The energetic membranes, so that they can wake up and feel good. And we are all energy, right? You brought up biophotons, and our listeners are pretty steeped in biophotons because I've educated them multiple times on it. If those have been following along every episode, we've had talks about biophoton energy.
Think about this, Tim. When people age but they're not in good health, think of how their face and their body starts to distort. Their ears get all drug out and their nose gets all funny shaped, and it's because their container is leaking light, and so it's like their face is melting in a physical level.
Yeah, like literally. So really, really cool stuff. I actually get it now. I understand it. So thank you for the explanation about ether and the cell. I have a much better understanding now. See, if I'm a very visual person, and sometimes I don't get things, but if I can visualize it, then all of a sudden I get it, because you're speaking my language, right? So it's all about talking to people in a language that they can understand, right?
And think about this, speaking of language, what you were saying in terms of the cell level of how this expresses is exactly how it expresses on the bigger energy field level. And think about the word immunity, or your immune system. Actually, your energetic body is the first and primary level of your immunity system. And the word immunity is I'm unity. So if you are in unity and coherent and have a strong vessel without holes in it, without fragmentation, and you're in unity, then it gives you immunity to external toxins, vampiric energies, anything that could toss you out of balance. And it allows you to live in a lifestyle where your inner world directs the outer world rather than the outer world directing your inner world.
That makes total sense. That's awesome. So before I guess we could get into this in the third segment. We're about there, but maybe you can talk a little bit. Well, is there anything else that you'd want to share about about ether do you think we need to know about, or the plasma, or biophotons? Is there anything else? I mean, I think you kind of covered everything, but I just want to make sure, or maybe give any examples. Do you have any examples of anybody? Because that's what I was thinking about in the third segment. We could get into some examples of like people that you've worked with. We can do that, but I don't know. After what I just said, is there anything coming to mind?
I think that a lot of what we have left to discuss would probably fit into the third segment. Talking solutions and examples definitely sounds good.
Okay, so let's just go back to my experience, then we'll wrap up with that because we have a few more minutes here. Which is okay. So what did you notice with me when we went through the session? Because like I said, it was an hour-long session, but I was gonzo. It was like 10, 15 minutes as far as the clock was in my mind, but it was like an hour. What did you notice with me?
Yeah, buddy. You sure it's a little personal. I mean, it's not too terrible, but
it's okay.
This is we're revealing the sound and tone of your energy and your DNA, your inner genetics, if you will. So for you, you're actually a very strong field person, and not surprising because you do so much work on your health. But there was in particular, so to explain the biofield anatomy hypothesis, just in brief, this definitely ties into the idea of chakras. Chakras are part of how this idea was developed, but there's an anatomy to the energy field that surrounds your body. And so energy that is stuck or off balance to the left, to the right, the front, or the back, depending on also the vertical level of it on those two axes, or those three axes of up, down, left, right, forward, back, where it's stuck in that region tells you a little bit about what is the emotional expression of that stuck energy. And this is really amazing because it means that every organ, every part of the body, literally every part of the body correlates to something on the emotional body level too. It's all one system. So whenever we receive an injury of any type, it is not just an accident. Although at a level of consciousness that most people operate at, it feels like, oh, I just stubbed my toe. But in fact, every single part of the body, if it is injured and you are paying attention and you are armed with this knowledge, then you can realize that, oh, I've got a bad right hip. And actually, if you had a bad right hip, then that would represent being guilt-driven and overly busy in your life. So in fact, actually, Tim, that was where some of the static was for you, not to the level where it would maybe lead to injury or needing a hip replacement, like is so common in our Western culture, where this is a particularly regular problem for people. But that is a thing that I'm sure you can relate to, that you're a bit overactive physically, doing too much to keep up with mentally. So this correlates to like the front right side of your hip. That was where the imbalance was, and some on the back. So I would suggest that you may be carrying a little bit too much responsibility, or your mental relationship to all that responsibility is a little bit out of whack, in the sense that you feel like you have to do it all because otherwise you'd be guilty of not doing enough. So that was part of what I found when I was working in your field.
Interesting. Since we've talked, I've been diving back way more, even though more in my spiritual practice, reading more books. But something that just came to me was, I've been delegating more lately. People are in my team or something, bring something to me, and then I'm just like, nope, you handle it. You can figure it out. You're just as smart as I am, figure it out and bring it, so I've been kind of getting that off my plate, kind of, because I just keep taking things on, piling it on my back. I have a tendency to do that, think I can carry the whole world on my shoulders, when I'm realizing that that's probably not the best thing. And for me, it's about more being sacred with my time and my space. I should come to work, I should work, and then I should be able to set it down and go have my personal life, even though my work is like, it's not even work for me anymore. Like, I am enjoying this conversation a lot, but it is my work, right? But there's still like Tim that just wants to go on a hike, and I don't want to, I actually found myself, I went on a trail run yesterday, and I had to really keep shaking my head and be like, no, be here. Don't be thinking about the ebook that you need to write, or the consultation you're doing tomorrow, or whatever, the podcast, whatever, stop thinking about all that stuff. That's all future thinking. It doesn't exist. I'm not being present. Stop and look at the mud. And the dude, I don't know if you've ever heard anybody experience this. I don't know. God, I'm so glad I remembered this. So I'm trail running, right? And I have this trail that I run, and my goal is to not stop. No matter what, you can slow down, but do not stop until you reach the top of the mountain. And I kept doing it until I could finally do it. And now I can run to the top of the mountain without stopping. Now I'm like, oh, I'm going a little farther. Well, what ended up happening was I was running, and I was getting, I don't know, not frustrated, but I'm like, dang it, Tim, stop living in the future. You need to get grounded. And for some reason, I thought I should touch the ground right now, because I'm still running in rubber-soled shoes. They're trail running shoes. They're badass, by the way. Solomon's. I really like them. And so I just stopped running, even though I wasn't at the top of the mountain yet. And that was the whole thing. I have to get to the top of the mountain without stopping. I stopped, and I put my hands in the mud. I bent over like a, forward fold, and I put my hands in the mud, and I sat there and I was staring at my hands, and it was like my hands were moving, and they were like, each hand was like imploding and going and rotating inwards into the mud. And I just sat there and watched them, and it just kept, the movement was constant. It's almost like when, you look up at the stars or something at night, and or whatever, and you see, it's like it's moving, but it's not. I don't know how to explain it, but my hands in the physical world weren't moving, but I could see them, like the skin was turning in on itself, and it just kept happening. I stood there, and guess what? I was really present really quick. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I don't know what it was, dude. I don't know if you've heard of anything like this, but that's what happened yesterday. And it brought me into the present moment big time. And then finally I stood up and I was looking at my hands. I was like, holy shit. And then I finished the run, and I was thinking about that. What do you have you have any comments on that?
Oh yeah, I have a lot to say about that, actually, because I just pulled out my notes from our session. And I have a notebook where I keep information from each client so that I can go over it with them, or maybe, conversation like this, look at it again. And I'm remembering now that actually your third eye chakra was the only one that was actually weak. So part of the process I do is I measure the size of each chakra region of the energy field. I use dowsing rods for this, and it gives me a very specific measurement, and I can see how they all relate to each other before I even get in. And it gives me sort of like a diagnostic ability to know where to spend my time, which is why I can do the whole process of getting somebody's energy field in balance and strong within an hour. Whereas some practitioners of this particular method, without the diagnostic dowsing rods that I guess, innovated, that was sort of an intuitive thing for me to try adding that to the process. They might need to spend 2 or 3 hours because there's a lot of exploration to try to find the dissonance. And I can kind of pinpoint it before I even start using the forks. So your third eye chakra was about 1 foot off your body, which is at the time we did this. And that was very small relative to everything else that was about 5 or 6 feet. Your root chakra was even stronger. It was about 7 foot. An average for a human that is in good health energetically is about 6 feet off the left and the right of the body, is how wide your energy field is. Now think about that in context with the whole 6 foot rule during the cooties thing. They don't want
all that. I don't know if that lines up, but I do know what I was told on that one, which kind of made sense, is the reason why they wanted people 6 feet apart is so that their facial recognition cameras on the streets in the downtown cities could very easily recognize and pinpoint everybody. That was the whole thing, so it wasn't confusing.
Well, theys have usually more than one intention with every chess move they make, right?
Yeah.
So the third eye, I have candles that are part of the table that I'm working with to do the remote healing. And also your third eye candle during the session, the flame was burning twice as bright as all the rest. It was like double the size. They're all literally the same brand and type of candle. They're not different brands. They're very similar candles. So whenever I see something like that, that is also symbolic and important. And so you're talking about this idea of, I got to be able to get to the top of the mountain. Well, the third eye is pretty much the top of the mountain because your crown chakra is above your head a little bit. It's not really in your body. And where the imbalance was for you on the third eye was off to the right. And the right side of the third eye, if there's energy stuck in that region, it represents thinking about the future a lot. Whether it's you're worried that something bad is going to happen, or maybe you got a diagnosis and you're afraid you're going to die. Or in your case, I think it has to do with being in your to-do list a lot, right? Before you get there and not in the present moment. And what you did to go put your hands in the mud is an amazing and intuitive and exactly perfect solution for whenever you start feeling that way and getting sort of spun out into the thinking about the future or the past, because you're grounding for sure. And also your hands in this biofield anatomy, and this is also the same in like Chinese medicine and many other modalities, the hand is actually a microcosm of the entire energy field. And so are the feet, amazingly. So whenever you get your bare feet on the earth, you think about reflexology. Yeah. There are points on the feet that connect to every organ, right? Same for the hands. So by getting your hands into the mud, and you were just feeling this on a mystical level, it sounds like you were totally balancing yourself out. Your whole field gets improved by grounding through the hands and the feet. So that was a really great solution. And love to hear that you're delegating more since we had that session, because that would be a very elegant solution and symbolic too of you having made a shift through that new awareness and that mindset change that may have been subtle for you, but on the energy level, now your mind and your body are following that shift.
Yeah, you didn't know you were a business coach, did you? Back though. So yeah, man, that was like I've never, maybe when I was a kid I stuck my hands in the mud, but we've done that kind of stuff. But for me to be running and then all of a sudden do that, I don't know why I did it. I just did it. It was really, and then to see my hands doing that, I can't even explain it. It was just like the weirdest. It was like all my skin was moving and the hands were rotating internally on themselves. It was trippy. And I was down there for minutes because I'm just like, oh, this is going to go away. Maybe it's because I've been huffing and puffing and I'm bent over and I'm losing oxygen to my brain or something. And I'm just like, I got my breath back and I was still doing it. And I was just like, whoa, that was so cool. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that was my experience. Your energy field getting an improved flow state, and that was just how your perceptions were communicating that to you.
Yeah, it was. All I know, it was awesome. Okay, guys, we're gonna take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll get into some examples of people that Chance has helped, and with sound healing and all the good work he's doing to help people bring their bodies back into balance. We'll be right back.
Turmeric has been used for thousands of years all across India and Southeast Asia and is one of the best anti-inflammatory compounds on Earth. Now you can get these incredible benefits with the new chemical-free body Turmeric 100 liquid drops. This ethically sourced breakthrough solution absorbs over 100 times better than regular turmeric products, eliminating the need to add black pepper. Turmeric 100 helps against inflammation and pain and is made with the same chemical-free body promise. No stimulants, 100% natural, and always made in the USA. Get yours today at chemicalfreebody.com.
What's up, health heroes? Tim James here. I'm back with Chance Garton, and we've been talking everything about flow and states and energy and ether and all kinds of stuff. So now, just as a practical standpoint, I want to give you guys I have Chance actually give you some stories so maybe you can relate on ways that it could help you. Because at the end, I'll give you his link and stuff. And I highly suggest you guys, if you're feeling like you want to get some energy movement, you got some energy stuck, or you're stuck in a relationship or a career path or, whatever. This could be something you can do it in comfort of your own home, like I did, and break free. And I can already tell you, it's like already helped me with, like I said, with delegating and stuff like that. And, it's been great. I've been doing good ever since the session. So I thank you for doing that with me. It was awesome. All right. So maybe you can give some stories of, certain people that have come to you with like the common problems that you see over and over and over again. Maybe we can go into 3-4 of those different common problems and what people came to you for, what you did, and what they've seen afterwards in their life.
Absolutely, man. So the most common problem that I see currently that is very, very prevalent, I think just about anyone that I've ever worked on since I begun this a year ago. I've only actually been doing this for clients for about a year. I've been studying the modality for 3 years probably. And then, like I said at the beginning, I've had a history of energy work experimentally, intuitively. So for friends and family, right? So the most common area where there's some stuck energy in people's field right now is around the left armpit, left shoulder region. And this correlates to the heart chakra. Eileen Day McCusick, the author I mentioned before that I learned so much about this from, she calls it the pit of despair.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it is called that is because for whatever reason, our body, our biofield, our energy field anyway, takes on the tone of the world in this region. And the world currently is definitely like a sick place. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of grief, especially in the last couple of years. So
especially if you turn on the news.
Really, especially for people with a high level of empathy and openness, really common to start absorbing into that region. And maybe just think about your left shoulder. If you have common problems there, right shoulder would actually represent maybe kind of carrying the weight of the world too much in a self-harming way. But left shoulder is you're carrying the emotions of the world. And the armpit is maybe more the specific zone where that cuts in. But it's great to, once you actually know that, you can intentionally release that energy without even needing a sound healing session, possibly. It's really just about opening up that channel the way that you did when you put your hands in the dirt. You can play in the dirt as a kid, or you can know that you're grounding and do it on purpose. And they have two very different effects. I mean, electrically being grounded either way is beneficial, but adding the power of your intention is massively more powerful. So that's a really common thing that I see. Another example that's a good story, unless you want to comment on that, Tim.
I actually do, because this is the weirdest thing. Like during that whole, when COVID hit, or whatever it is.
I like cooties.
Yeah. When that whole thing happened, I actually got my right shoulder and my left shoulder got jacked up. I wasn't even able to raise my arms up. There was nothing that I was doing. I was trying to figure it out. I hadn't done anything different. It's, my exercise routines hadn't changed. I wasn't doing anything different. I couldn't figure it out. Now, you said the right shoulder is when, if that gets hurt, it's like you're carrying the weight of the world, right?
Yeah, that has more to do with, well, there's a myriad of possibilities, but what I find most often is the right shoulder injuries have to do with like very close to the right hip. They're tied together in that it's like shouldering too much responsibility.
Okay. I definitely had that going on because that was 2020. Yeah, we'd had some, actually I finally started, our business was finally profitable. We kind of exploded, even though I was, dying on the vine for 5 years trying to help people. We helped a lot of people, but financially just wasn't there because I just,
well, you just nailed it, Tim. So the right side, right shoulder, kind of what makes it different from right hip. The right hip is about the actual physical activity of doing a lot. But the heart chakra region, which is what is governing the right shoulder, and this also links into throat to a degree, has to do with saying yes when we mean no, having poor boundaries, maybe emotionally caretaking other people, or even allowing them to vampirize you on an energetic level, take advantage of you because you can't say no because you just want to help. There's also the possibility that's more the front part of the shoulder. If the injury was more in the back region, then it tends to represent somebody who is holding back their aggressive energy. They're not expressing what makes them angry and getting it out.
Yeah. So I had a right one. And then the left one was more about wearing all the crap that society and the world's. So it was all that stuff. And back then I was sucked into the news and back and forth because I had no idea about the not so obvious establishment back then, which we've talked about before a couple of times. There's the people that, they're not good people in politics and office and judicial system and Hollywood. And then, there's the ones you think are good, but really it's WWF wrestling and they look like they're against each other. And then behind the scenes, the cocktail party, they're laughing at us. So I was watching the news. I was on social media, and I was doing this while I was trying to do this business thing. And this became important because I'm thinking, God, the world's going to end and I got to help. And when my shoulder started healing was when I just, Facebook took away my live feature. So I couldn't do lives anymore and talk about this stuff. And I thought, you know what? I'm done with them. I'm not going to go on there anymore. And I just don't even go to Facebook anymore. I got off of social media. and then I hired some people, and both my shoulder injuries went away. And they were there for over a year.
You know what, too? I can relate to that same period of time. Although mine kind of started to come on more in 2019 rather than 2020. But I had a serious left shoulder injury that it occurred while I was rock climbing. I'm a big rock climber. My favorite athletic activity as a hobby. And that was around the time where I started finding out about the work of Eileen Day McCusick, who I've already mentioned. And she has this is something that is a major solution. So I want everyone to maybe take note of this, because if you want to be able to help yourself out, maybe you've got a shoulder injury or a chronic injury anywhere in your body, or you want to use this tool cosmetically, which I'll briefly touch on. There is such a thing as a tuning fork that is weighted. And for those who are watching the video version of this, I'm holding it up. It's got these metal discs on the end of the tongs of the fork. And so that causes the vibration to last longer. And you hit the tuning fork, and then you hold the bottom end of it up to your body and touch it directly to your body. And this transmits the electricity and the vibration and the coherent sound directly to your cells, energizing your cells and also giving them the ability to self-balance. The body is an auto-tuning instrument, and almost at a miraculous level, to be honest. The simplest way, without getting too much in a digression here, is InnerVerse has harmony and dissonance. It's got entropy and syntropy. It has the sense that everything is falling apart, and it also has the force that brings everything together and the self-organizing principle. So the best example, if anyone wants some evidence that this organizing principle of harmony exists and is actually superior to and overrides dissonance or entropy, go look up a YouTube video or something of metronomes. Everyone knows what a metronome is. Tick, 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 tick. Use it to keep rhythm for a piano. If you get a room full of metronomes and you set them all off to go at different times, at different rhythms, and you come back to the room later, they will all have synced up with each other mysteriously. And your body does the same thing. It auto-tunes. So to wrap up this story, I've
actually seen that, dude. I've seen that with those metronomes. I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
It's trippy.
Yeah. When you put harmony and dissonance together, harmony wins. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can scientifically prove it, but that's just a fact of nature. And that's a proof of, like, the light is stronger than the dark. You can shine light into a dark room and brighten it up, but there's no way to shine darkness into the light and take away the light. It doesn't work that way. So this tool that I was talking about, this weighted tuning fork, is called a sonic slider. You can get it at the biofieldtuningstore.com. I am not affiliated with them, but I ought to be, I think, because I've probably got hundreds of people to buy these by this point. But I'm just glad that people are getting it. Really amazing tool for working on yourself. I believe they cost about $75, but you'll never need to go buy another prescription of it. You'll have it forever. And so I'd had this shoulder injury. It was lasting for months and months. I would take entire month off climbing and hope it would get better, and then come back to the wall, and I still couldn't lift my arm above head height without extreme pain. Right. And I couldn't get it all the way up above my head, period. I got this sonic slider, this weighted tuning fork, which is tuned to the frequency 93.96 hertz. That is actually the Schumann resonance, the Earth's background frequency, times 12, 12th harmonic of the Schumann resonance. And I started using this fork on my shoulder, and the very day that I did it, within a 15-minute or less session of adding this tone to my shoulder, the pain was alleviated by about 80%. And within 3 to 5 days of doing these sessions on my shoulder, I'm not even kidding you, Tim, it was probably a combined total of 30 or 45 minutes over 4 or 5 days. I had full range of motion again.
Dude, I'm on the Biofield tuning store right now, and they have a sonic slider masterclass for women's bodies.
Yes, they do. Actually,
cool.
This is marketed as a cosmetic tool primarily. And that is probably a way to get more normies interested in it.
Does it help?
I've actually got some slides of like before and afters. People, how we were talking about that, how your face melts if you got a leaky energy field.
Right.
People get older and their skin gets saggier. There are many people, women love it for this reason, that use the sonic slider on their face. And over time, over months of repeated use, just a few minutes a day, the skin actually tightens up. And it doesn't like eliminate wrinkles per se, but it does make your skin healthier and stronger, and it tightens up. I mean, a lot cheaper than plastic surgery, I'm sure.
Wow.
So,
Dude, they got tons of tuning forks. There's this Fibonacci pair, 89 hertz. I've heard about that Fibonacci, what's it called? The God, I can't think of
Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has to do with phi, which is the pattern, numerical pattern spiral ratio that all life expresses in.
Is there anything else that I should get in here? Because I'm going to go ahead and order that tuning fork immediately. Is there anything
Yeah, well,
else
that's a really good one for self-work or using it directly on the body. I also am a big fan of solfeggio tones for non-weighted tuning forks. And solfeggio tones, there's 9. And that's an amazing conversation we could have in and of itself, the mystical, numerological significance of those tones. But that's what I use for people in my work for the remote sessions. But if you're going to get, say, 2 forks that were non-weighted, I would get the 417 and the 528. I think those are really great because they're right in the middle of the range of solfeggio tones, and like any 2 tones that are next to each other in solfeggio, the differential between the 2 frequencies is 111. And I won't maybe digress too much into the mystical 369 aspect of solfeggio, but suffice to say, those 2 forks work for anything that you are going to try to do with tuning forks on your energy body. I like to have a full set and have more range, but it's not absolutely necessary because, as we said, it's really just about introducing a coherent sound tone to your body and letting your body autocorrect itself based on that.
Like
resonance.
the metronomes.
Yeah.
So now I get it. And I hope everybody, maybe you guys got it earlier, but I just kind of got it. This is another aha for me because I visualized it. This is such a good, I'm so glad you came on today, man. Cause I'm like, there's some stuff that it was just like some gray area for me. I didn't really understand it. So it's like, well, how does a tuning fork work? Well, I understand the vibration and it goes through you and it kind of adjusts. But now with the metronome, it totally makes sense. It's like, because these frequencies are coming in perfect, they're harmonious, and they're coming through your body. And your body is just like a tuning fork that's off doing something else. And you bring this in, you bring it in, and the body autocorrects, brings it right back to this one. And then boom.
How about this, Tim? You know that our cells on that cell wall have cilia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those cilia are actually like micro tuning forks on the cell. And it's been demonstrated, this is total materialistic science that is absolutely proven and repeatable, that whenever you introduce sound and vibration and electricity, things of these natures to cells, that the cell membrane, which is it actually can change the shape of its receptors in the membrane. So what our cells do whenever they're introduced to pharmaceutical chemicals, for example, or herbs or anything that's a material medicine, is that the cell membrane will have to reshape itself to take in that particular nutrient. And that's all well and good. But part of what is actually causing the change to you anatomically is just the fact that your cells are changing structure and then thus changing the resonance at which they are influencing your whole body, not just the chemical itself. And because sound can be used and applied to do the exact same thing, there could very likely come a day where instead of penicillin, you just target the exact frequency that would cause your cell membrane to create that same receptor shape and have the same effect without the need for the actual chemical or pharmaceutical or antibiotic or what have you.
Now you're talking about like the Rife machines, like blasting in my head. You familiar with that?
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of study on Rife, but I know that it works on the same principle.
It's basically, he went and this guy measured the different frequencies of all disease, cataloged them, and then made a machine that would send vibrational frequencies in to heal that specific disease. So you just adjust the machine just like you would. It's an energetic healing machine.
Yeah, when we say vibrational medicine, it's literally medicine, but without the need for the allopathic, toxic, side effects.
Yeah. So it's like this. I don't know. This show today has really helped me even legitimize even more and make it more coherent in my head on why this stuff is working so good. And
and that power of belief actually makes it work more for you once you have that intellectual framework or scaffolding that you can ascend upon. Yeah.
And it's taken me a long, here I am 11 years into this journey, and I'm just now finally, I don't know. It's all coming together for me, I feel like, which is really cool. I have a deeper.
Well, it's a thing. We keep learning as we go. I mean, just 2 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to explain this at the level that I am now. And so I'm excited to see, even a few months from now, how far this understanding can carry us to even further make this work for us in a more positive way.
Awesome. So is there any other stories, like I said, certain things that normal common things that people are coming in with that you deal with, and then how's their experience been with you and what's their life like?
Yeah, I think I'll give another example of something common and then go back into a particularly interesting story to just show how far this practice can actually go to like revealing things to us that need to happen. So in terms of common things, sometimes people will show up with, actually, this is what's really common. A swollen energy field, like one of their chakras will be overloaded, too much energy in it. And that represents a bunch of stuck, unflowing energy. Sometimes it might be the heart. Sometimes it might be the third eye. It's usually one of those two, if it's going to be. So whether it's like they're really stuck with unprocessed issues in their past relating to the third eye, or maybe there's a whole bunch of grief, sadness, sorrow that they're not processing. So here's an example, like somebody that came to me and she'd come for multiple sessions. She had a problem with asthma and lungs and breathing and things like that. And we found that the heart chakra area was overly big, and then when I got in there, and also this had to do with some of the energy I was finding in the solar plexus chakra, because this is where mom and dad energy tend to hang out. Without her telling me that this happened, I actually was able to discern that her father had died when she was a child, and that she was carrying grief over that was still not fully expressed, and that was a big weight and also like a bottleneck in the heart chakra area, which was then weakening the lower physical body chakras of the root and the sacral in particular. And the lung issue of asthma that she was experiencing, the lungs are a direct connection to heart chakra. And in fact, whenever we have problems with the lungs, whether it is something like asthma or something that is a self-sabotage behavior, like smoking, for example, that actually correlates completely to grief and sadness that is unexpressed or unfelt, that is unprocessed. So one thing I didn't mention about the biofield is that, like the rings of a tree, the depth at which the stuck energy is at, say it's like 3 feet off of your body and your field is 6 feet. If it's 3 feet off the body and you're 30 years old, then I can tell that whatever it was that caused this trauma and caused this fracturing of your energy field happened when you're about 15. So it works like that. The distance from the body correlates directly to the age at which it happened, the outer edge of the field being birth or gestation, maybe even something while you're in the womb, and then right close to the body is present moment.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and she was able to to just cry out a lot of that and get real about it in the session, and it helped massively. And she's been kicking ass. Like, we're personal friends. She's been kicking ass since then, big time, and has come back for further sessions, and more work has been done. But we never had to go and revisit that particular issue, and it was just like more layers of the onion and more improvement continually each time. But by the fourth time we did a session together, we were so in sync. We were so in sync with the process that whenever I would switch my fork to a different chakra region, she would be like, "Oh, now I feel this moving up into my chest," where before I'd been feeling it down lower. And she was she was telling me where I was at in her field, because she could tell based on how in sync the connection was between us. So that was amazing. And then another really good story, maybe the last story that's coming to mind, was one time I had a client who had recently had injury that had caused him to lose half, I think, part of his index finger. I don't think it was the whole finger, but it had to be amputated or it got cut off and they couldn't reattach it, something like that. And I happen to know from Chinese medicine and the meridian system that the index finger connects to the meridian that goes through the gut, right? So I had an immediate sense, and then with the dowsing rod diagnostics, I was able to tell for sure that there was some serious root chakra gut issues going on. And what was really interesting about this was when I hit the part of his field, his energy field, there's a particular zone on the left and the right side, one on the maternal, one on the paternal side, called the ancestral river. And in this axis, if you will, of the field is where an energy flow or river connects all the way back to every ancestor you've ever had, on the maternal side for one side and on the paternal side for the other. And when I hit this ancestral river, I got this like message in my psychic mail slot, if you will. And this is kind of how it works for me. The idea will just pop in my head, and I've learned to go with it and trust that whatever it is that just jumps into my head and I'm thinking, I write it down, and I talk to them about it later, and they're like, yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know why I know or how I know, just for whatever reason, this etheric connection is allowing my body intelligence to tell me things that it's picking up in terms of the memory field of their body. So it's really crazy. It's really woo-woo sounding, but it is repeatable. So I hit the maternal side ancestral river, I think it was. And I got this mail slot memo that his grandmother was coming through and specifically was saying, I passed parasites to my offspring and they passed it forward to their kids. And this particular line of parasites has been going forward from mother to child in our family for generations. And I regret that I never helped my family solve this problem. I regret that I passed it forward to my grandson and to all my other family members. And I'm coming through right now so that you can tell him to do a parasite cleanse, because these parasites are why he's overweight, are why he actually had the injury to his index finger, that it had to do with the strength energetically of these parasites that were in his gut. And I was like, wow, this is kind of at the time, it was one of the most like weird, far out specific psychic messages I'd got during a process. And after the session, I told him all of that I found out. I was like, man, your grandmother came through. She told me that she passed parasites onto your family, that you need to do a parasite cleanse. And I happen to know that your finger, the one that you had amputated partially, is connected to your gut on the meridian level. And so I really believe this message. And he's like, man, my grandmother is unconscious on her deathbed right now, and any day she's going to die and she's never going to wake up again. And I was like, whoa. So on the astral level, his grandmother was probably out of her body, but still connected to this plane and was trying to, correct and right unfinished business for her lifetime, and saw an opportunity, an opening to at least come help her grandson. And then he told me later that he did a parasite cleanse and that it made a huge difference for him. And I haven't caught up with him for a while, but I hope all the best, and that has driven him further into better levels of health and more different types of cleansing. And, but that's not a guarantee that something that dramatic will happen every session, but that's the kind of thing that can happen.
Dude, that is awesome. What a great story. I believe every word of it. I've experienced so many things like this that over and over and over again in the last 11 years of my own personal journey and working with other people, that there's definitely something to us. And I think one of the reasons that we're, as a society, we're so held back is we've lost that childlike quality of just, believing in, that anything's possible. Right. And especially learning about our bodies and how miraculous we are, and that we're all connected, and this, in this time space reality, just having a body to run around and do stuff in is a freaking gift. And for me, it's also, I have to understand, like, for me, it's like, I was all messed up with my health, and now I'm not. Now, originally I moved away from that out of fear, because I was afraid of dying. Like, I had people my age getting cancer and stuff around me. My friends were dying. And now it's like, I'm more moving towards something. And that's my hope. I want to get out with whether it's the podcast or getting on other people's shows or TV shows or podcasts or whatever, and our work that we do. I want to get out there and bring awareness and hope and enlightenment to as many people as possible, so they can start moving towards something, rather than having to move away from using a fear-based model to move away from stuff, because you got the problem, right? And unfortunately, we get a lot of people that we've tried everything, and then I just had some people here today. The gal's got stage 4, like colorectal cancer, and it's literally wrapped around her vagina, and it's in there, and it's metastasized to her liver, and that's a fear. It's scary, right? It's a scary thing, and I want to get out there and it's like, don't wait around till you get like where I was, where you're bleeding rectally and having all these issues. Like, let's get ahead of the curve. Let's be open-minded, and let's move forward in a happy way, and be open to all this stuff, because it's it's legitimate. Like you said, a lot of this stuff is being validated through science more and more every day, and it's repeatable. And there's just lots of people through history that have been using energy and frequency, and I mean, even the frequency of like Bach flower remedies. Flowers put off a frequency. Every different flower. I mean, rose. Everybody, like a lot of women listening, will know about rose water, right? Super high vibrational frequency, and women like to spritz that on their face. It's energetics. That's why they like it so much. And the whole Bach flower remedy stuff. So everything, guys, is energy. Everything is frequency. Your cells, electrons, they're spinning. And I just really want to thank you, Chance, for the work that you're doing. I want to thank you for my own personal session, for helping other folks. It's really, I love hearing your stories. I feel more grounded in understanding what's actually going on now. I'm actually more excited about doing more sound healing and more grounding and all this other stuff and everything I do, and sharing it with other people so that they can also have breakthroughs like I've had, and like other people that you've helped had. So where do people get a hold of you, brother, if they want to get, they want to check out your podcast or get some sound healing sessions with you?
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me on. And thank you for getting a session with me before interviewing me about it, because in all the interviews I've done about this, I've actually never had a host that had the process done themselves. So that really helps. And we had a great session. People can find me at InnerVersePodcast.com. There's also a page, InnerVersePodcast.com/sound-healing. Probably going to be linked up in this show. I sent Tim that link.
Yep, we'll put
and from there, you can catch, there's more information on the process, how to connect with me to do the process. And there's also a couple of videos that go in more in depth than even this conversation about the whole biofield anatomy hypothesis. I've put out group sound healing sessions that they're recorded. And, at the time I did it live, but they are still effective right now. As a matter of fact, one of the best clients I ever had in terms of coming to the process with an already strong, vibrant, and balanced energy field was somebody who told me that they'd been listening to the group sound healing session video that's on that page I just mentioned every day for many days in a row. So that, and the fact that people that after group healing sessions like that tell me that they have like detox events and like little mini healing crises, but in a good way, let me know that even in that modality where it's just for the whole group and not specifically working on your individual issues, your body can still work with that. Like the metronomes, they all harmonize together. It's really powerful. So InnerVersePodcast.com is where you can catch the links to everything I do. I also do one-on-one counseling through using oracle cards, and that's spiritual counseling. Pairs really well with the sound healing, actually. A lot of times the cards will repeat whatever it is that I tell you that I found in the field in a way to help you see the synchronicity of it all and more verify and solidify your mental shift, which is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. My show is weekly. Man, I'm putting out so much content. I think I've had just this week since Sunday, like in the last 5 days, I think I've published 14 hours of content, all different stuff. So there's a ton of knowledge available. My live show on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Central is called Vibrant. That is a lot of fun. And if people support me through my Patreon or my Rockfin, which they can find linked on any episode or on my website itself, I just published a 4-hour full seminar on the biofield anatomy and sound healing in detail, explaining ether in a much more detailed way, explaining the process of how bringing coherent sound will add centropy to your literal expression of your DNA. And in that seminar, it includes a group healing session that was mega potent. So all of that, and there's probably more stuff. I should mention my Telegram channel as well. You can find a link to that in any episode or on my website too. We got a vibrant community, about 500 people right in there that are just all geniuses in some zone, all creative, all beautiful, all helpful. Pop in, say hi, enjoy the vibe, or ask your questions and get really great answers. It beats the hell out of Google, asking the droid what the answer it wants you to think versus asking real human beings that are going to reply based on their own experience and knowledge. It's a totally different thing. So join our Telegram, replace your search engines with real human beings, and connect to the vibrant community we've got. It's a beautiful tribe. And I got to say thanks again for having me on, Tim. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, guys, make sure to check him out. Again, it's InnerVersePodcast.com/sound-healing if you want to get an appointment with him. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. And, don't be afraid of sound healing. Get excited about it. And I guess the big takeaway here, too, is like thinking, going from mental shift from woo-woo to wellness and understanding that sound healing and frequency medicine, which is what he offers, is legit. It works. And as you guys know, I always like to have first person experience before I recommend anything. And that's why I went ahead and I said, yeah, Chant. He was like, tell me all this stuff. But I'm like, yeah, I'm open to that. I'm open to that. But I still had a little bit of the woo-woo in the back corner of my left chakra or something. And so I decided I'm like, I'm going to experience this for myself. And that's what I do. We are like a living laboratory over here at chemicalfreebody.com and at the Health Hero Show. So like I'm always experimenting on stuff myself. I have stuff I'm trying right now, and I've got some breakthrough stuff that I'm trying right now that's going to be an integral part of moving forward and helping people have a chemical-free life and to heal their gut. I'm very excited about it. So all these cool stuff is going to be coming out. And again, go from woo-woo to wellness. You have to make that mental shift and just, let the healing begin. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Can I get one more thing in there, Tim?
Yeah, dude, throw it in.
I think, first of all, honestly, you would love to have my unofficial guru, Eileen Day McCusick, on the show. If you're interested, maybe I can get you guys linked up. But because she is the one who's bringing this to the world more than anybody and discovered this anatomy of the biofield hypothesis. But I wanted to say that this conversation isn't about getting you guys to come and be my client. In fact, like I'm really busy. If a lot of you hit me up, there might be a slight waiting list. And that's not because I don't want to do that and work with you and help you. I love that. But more importantly is that I wanted, like Tim just said, to take this concept from woo-woo to wellness and realize that you can actually help yourself. You can learn these techniques yourself. There are simple things like this sonic slider that Eileen invented that can make a huge shift in your life. And adding intention to the sound is so important, and belief. It's not just like you listen to binaural beats and think, this might not even work. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Know that coherent sound and resonance is influencing you from a cellular level to an universal etheric level. Believe it, intend for it to do so, put it into practice for yourself. And if you want to work together, I'd love to. But more important than that is I want everybody in the world to realize that they're creatures of sound and that having a sound mind can be achieved by using coherent frequencies.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. And thank you, listeners around the world, for tuning in, subscribing, and sharing. I just do my best to try to find cool people like Chance to help, give you guys new information and sometimes revisit old information that's been working for centuries that has been lost in this modern shuffle. Either intentionally.
This is definitely ancient. It goes all the way back to Egypt or before what we're talking about today.
Oh yeah. It's probably even older than that. Right. So, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you, if anything, like there's like you were talking about, there's that silver slider. I got that written down. I'm going to go get one of those. Maybe your knee hurts. I have my elbow hurts right now because I'm playing guitar like a crazy man. So I'm going to buy that thing and ding, ding, ding. I'm going to start doing some energy frequency healing to myself. And believe me, I'm going to believe the hell out of it that it's going to work because I get it now. I am going to bring myself back under balance like a metronome. So anyway, thank you, listeners, so much. I love you guys. Thank you for sharing the show. And until next time, change yourself, change your world, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Thanks for listening again to the Health Hero Show. I'm your host, Tim James. And remember, change yourself, change your world, and we'll see you again on the next episode. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
You have just listened to the Health Hero Show with Tim James.